Good morning. I'm Ben Ayers. I'm Dean of the Terry College of Business. My pleasure to welcome you to our Terry Exec Ed Center and to our Terry Third Thursday. We have a very special day planned for all of you. We've got two sets of speakers, and I'll introduce our first speaker in just a couple of minutes. Let me thank our alumni board for organizing today's event and this entire series. They do a terrific job for us. And also, please join me in thanking Synovus, who's our corporate sponsor, as well as WABE, who is our media sponsor. So let me thank them. Next month, we'll have Alex Zigliara, who's the CEO of Mr. Beast Feastables. And then in June, we'll wrap up the first half of the year with Katie Kirkpatrick, who's the CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber. So two outstanding programs also coming up in the next 2 months. It's my pleasure now to introduce our first speaker, Atlanta Mayor Mayor Dickens. We're so pleased to have him with us, an Atlanta native and community leader. Mayor Dickens became the 61st mayor for Atlanta in January of 2022. His Moving Atlanta Forward platform prioritizes neighborhood safety, health, and economic development, and building on the city's tech and entertainment growth. Previously, he served as city councilman, focusing on transportation and affordable housing initiatives like those around the Atlanta Beltline. He also advocated for higher police officer salaries and developed job tech training programs for young people. As mayor, he's invested in early childhood education, improved pothole response, and led successful efforts against de-annexation. With a background in sales engineering and entrepreneurship, he co-founded a home furnishings company, City Living Home Furnishings, and has been involved in technology and job training for nonprofits. He holds degrees in chemical engineering and public administration from Georgia Tech and Georgia State University, respectively. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Dickens.
Thank you, Dean Ayers, and good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, it's good to see all of you. I'm glad to be here this Thursday morning that you guys have these third Thursdays. It's pretty cool. I'm glad to be here with some of my colleagues, our Chief Sustainability Officer, Chandra Farley, and our Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer, John R., and our team of folks that get things done across the city. Thank you also, Dean Ayers, and your remarkable leadership here at the Terry College. This College of Business does a lot for our region and our nation, and the city of Atlanta is happy to have you here in the city in Buckhead. And I'm excited to be here for your third Thursday along with my team because we're looking forward to hearing from them later. You're going to hear from them after you hear from me, and they have a lot going on in the city of Atlanta that I want you to be a part of if you can join in. Atlanta is a place where big things happen. It's my home. It's where I was born and raised. I grew up on the west side of Atlanta in Adamsville, went to Atlanta Public Schools, and then Georgia Tech, and then Georgia State. But I wore, look, see what I did? I did a thing this morning. I need my I got the memo. Yeah. And then Georgia State. That's right. Go Jackets. Somebody in here went to Tech. All things Atlanta for me. I mean, you think about it: Atlanta Public Schools, Georgia Tech, Georgia State. So this place, since I was 16 years old, I wanted to be the mayor of Atlanta. And to be in this position right now. And so our city is thriving, and folks are taking notice. People across the country, people here are taking notice. The metropolitan area was actually recently named the 6th largest and 3rd fastest growing region in the country by the U.S. Census Bureau. The 6th largest is right here. We're home to about 6.3 million residents, and that number continues to rise. In fact, Atlanta's population growth grew by almost 69,000 new residents between 22 and 23. In 2022, Money Magazine rated Atlanta as the best place in the country to live. That is outstanding, just a year and a half ago. And it's partly because of our booming economic development and our commitment to equity. Atlanta has also we also have the third highest concentration of Fortune 500 companies. The third largest concentration is right here in Atlanta. You would think, some of these other places, but no, your city, my city, is a city that has all of these Fortune 500s. And then Black Enterprise just the other day said that Atlanta is the best place to start a business. So this is big news for Atlanta. So this kind of growth and investor confidence doesn't just happen by accident. This happens when action meets purpose and determination to make a place where people and businesses want to be. One thing that sets our city apart is our integral focus on public-private partnerships. And I think that's something that's going to be big for all of you that have this Terry College in your blood. Next week, we will host our second edition of Doing Business with the City of Atlanta. This workshop presents a valuable opportunity for direct engagement with the city officials so that we can make an even greater impact together. And so this is my way of, teaching people, or at least bringing people into the tent to see, how do you do business with the City of Atlanta? We're a big business. I mean, ultimately, we buy lots of things and procure lots of services. How do you do business with us? How do we move things faster, better, more efficiently, more innovatively by using public-private partnerships? I happen to serve on the U.S. Conference of Mayors as the chairman of the Public-Private Partnership Task Force. It's a brand new task force that when I became mayor, we started that because they know my business background. And so this is how we're getting so much done in the city. Our Department of Procurement offers the ATL Suppliers website, www.atlsuppliers.com, a key tool that helps ensure accessibility for existing suppliers and expands opportunities for those that want to do business with us, these eligible companies that are seeking to work with the city. And then through Invest Atlanta, which is, I'm the chairman of the board of Invest Atlanta. When I leave here, that's our board meeting is 9 o'clock. Our city's Economic Development Authority, Invest Atlanta, is where we offer key financial education and other essential resources to support Atlanta's businesses. So Invest Atlanta is how we attract new business, how we retain businesses, and then how we grow and scale small businesses. We're connecting small businesses to those large businesses that I mentioned that are Fortune 500, that are bolstering our minority and women-owned businesses as well. And we use innovative programs like the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, the largest municipally operated women's initiative in the country of this type. And that's a thing that Atlanta has. We're not only just focused on business growth and job growth citywide, but also on equity and inclusivity to make sure that Atlanta works and is an opportunity for everyone. We're also the tech capital of the South, with more than 10,000 tech companies that have a presence here in this region and in every single technology industry, part of that industry. My goal is to make Atlanta a top 5 technology ecosystem, and that's why I hired and created this new position, a senior technology advisor, and Donnie Beamer is the occupant of that position as the inaugural position holder, and it is a way for us to really focus. He's a one-stop shop, a team to be a one-stop shop for all our technology, for founders, for funders, for VCs, for others to be able to see how we can move closer to that goal and to provide these innovative companies a way to have a presence on the global technology stage, but right here in Atlanta. A lot of people go to Georgia Tech and the AUC and Georgia State, and then they used to bleed out to the coasts. They take their technology talent and they go out to the coast, to California or to Boston and to New York. Now we want them to do all that work here and have this be the ecosystem they operate in. And so we're a city chock full of entrepreneurs, innovators, incubators, and thinkers who are working daily to make sure that we are a city of opportunity for all, to ensure that all Atlantans take part in our city's continued growth and prosperity. We're working to provide safe, quality, and affordable housing options citywide. We're continuing to develop policies and programs to help address homelessness and support our unsheltered communities and people that are in need. We're making key investments and strengthening Atlanta's infrastructure, and we've made significant progress on public safety over the last 2 years. We made Atlanta one safe city. That's my goal, to make Atlanta a safe city. And that was my number one job when I took office. The campaigns, the election of 2021 was all about public safety and making sure that we address those issues around affordable housing. And so I dived right in and when I took office in 2022. And so I'm proud to say that last year homicides were down 21% in Atlanta, which was the 4th highest drop across the nation. That was significant work. Not only were homicides down, overall crime was down, and youth crime was down, and rapes were down 50%, youth crime 46% down. You think about all these metrics to make sure that you are able to enjoy this city. We want our residents, our visitors, our business owners to feel safe, to move around in the city of Atlanta, and we're doing the work, the hard work to make that happen with policing and non-policing activities to make sure we bring about that change. And so our population is projected to double by the year 2050. As we grow, it becomes more important than ever to unify our city. As we are growing, this region is growing, y'all, as you know. People come here on third Thursdays to the Terry College, and they don't leave till they go on to glory, as they say. They come here and they just keep staying here. And so we have so many amazing projects on the horizon across the city, from 4 new MARTA stations that I've recently proposed, located at Krog Street, Hosey Yard, Joseph E. Boone, Armour Yards, and Murphy's Crossing, to the Stitch, which our city was divided by this I-75, I-85 that divided neighborhoods, divided our cities on the east side and the west side, this huge Car River down the middle of our city. We're now going to stitch our city back together in this once-in-a-generation project, this CAP of the connector to unite our city and boost economic development and make sure that we have more green space and more affordability around that. Our entire region is moving forward as well. I have this pleasure. I was elected the chairman of the board of the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is the counties around, not just Atlanta, but around Atlanta. I'm proud to work alongside individuals who remain dedicated to improving our whole region and all of our communities, because we know that connected communities and stable, dependable government is good for business, and uncertainty is bad for business. As business owners like yourselves and me, we know that one thing that we don't want is uncertainty. You give me a predictable path, I'm going to hit it. You give me a few business challenges, I can manage it. But uncertainty such as crime, or uncertainty such as a pandemic, or uncertainty such as a recession or anything, war, et cetera, those are uncertainties that we make us more difficult to do business. And so that's why dependable, sturdy government is important. Atlanta is a group project. Our region is a group project, and we're proud to count everyone in this room as partners in this group project. So let's continue to grow together and forge a better tomorrow for the members of our community, for all the members of our community. And so I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here today and inviting me to join you on this occasion. And so now I'll turn it back over to you, Dean Ayers. Thank you. Well, I can stay here and answer questions, right? Wow. Y'all huddle together, figure out what that question is. Oh, got in the back. I saw you when you came in. I knew you had a question when you walked in.
Thank you so much for can you hear me from back here?
I can.
Okay. So I know you talk. So I just have a question. How do you want to best message the importance of the local government function? Because it feels like a lot of people don't really understand. Like, you hear a lot of people complain about everything, but they don't really realize like someone like you can do a lot more than like someone from the federal level can. How do you best message that to everyone?
Wow, that's a great question. First, everybody doesn't know all of the types of government. Even though we went to school, we had this class called civics and social studies, et cetera. This whole notion of local, state, and federal, people don't always get it. They just they'll call me about the post office stuff right now. Like my mail. What's up with my mail? I'm like, man, if you're sending a piece of mail to San Diego, it ain't on the mayor, right? And if you're trying to get a package from, Zara that's coming from it's not my fault. That's a federal thing. It's the U.S. Post Office, right? But that's the challenge that we've had. Technology has brought us closer, but it's also made us not as prescriptive about where to go to get your very unique needs met. So I think it's valuable that people understand what local government does, because people will show up on election day for a president, but will not show up for election day on local judge races or local city council and mayor's races, when those are the folks that are impacting your daily commute, your roads, your parks, your small business development, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have a great point of how to highlight what local government does and where local government ends. So, whether that's things around very critical decisions that are made at the state level. The state gets away with a lot of stuff because people know what the federal government does sometimes, and they know what cities do because they see the mayor on TV, or they say that pothole or that traffic light or that thing. But they'll say, well, why don't we get these homeless people off the street? And you say, well, we need a mental health facility, but that's not a city function. I can't, and I could actually get sued if I take your money from the city and do things that's not in the city's charter. So in the city of Atlanta, really actually every part of the state of Georgia, you pay a local tax, which is to your city, then you pay a county tax, and then you pay it to the school system. So in Atlanta, 50% of your house taxes go to the school system. 25% goes to the county, and 25% goes to the city. So that when you pay your tax bill, 50% goes to the school system, 25% goes to the county, 25% goes to the city. But I'm the one that gets fussed at, right? That's fine. But if you want health and human services is a county function. So when I'm trying to solve for homelessness and I'm trying to solve for mental health challenges and I'm making sure that these things, I'm actually teetering into a county function, but I'm doing so from a economic development perspective or something. I got to couch it in a way that helps me do that. But really, I want you to go to pitchforks to the county, right? Or to the state that is the county and state are more aligned in how money goes to the state and then it filters down to the counties. The city just has to fend for itself. So I try to encourage people to not just go to City Hall, but go to all chambers of government. Go to the county and say, hey, I want to know what's happening with, prosecution. APD arrested the same guy 6 times for stealing cars. What is the deal with the prosecution of that? And then on the vice versa is there's somebody sitting in jail that actually needs to either go home because they're innocent or they need to go to prison. Jail is just a holding place. But when we got an overran jail, that's a county function. And so that doesn't register to folks. They just be like, fix it so I can take my kids to soccer and I can make some money and go on vacation. And it's like, that's really what life is about, right? Take your kids where they gotta go, make some money and go on vacation. Call Zara to ship your package, right? To do that over and rinse and repeat. But your point is well taken. Whatever we could do here at Terry College and across the academia to express to people the value of all levels of government. We'll get a 50% voter turnout for Trump and Biden next year. We'll get maybe even 60, 70% voter turnout later this year. The very next year, I'm up for re-election. All the city folks will be up. We'll get maybe a 30% voter turnout, 30, 40% voter turnout. And you see me every day. Biden or Trump are coming to all these schools and all these local businesses and all these, day-to-day activities that really impact your life. So I think, tell your friends, vote in local elections, and then next year vote for me. That'll be a good thing. Okay.
I think we're good.
Oh, okay.
I gotta keep you on time.
Okay, got you. Good deal. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Mayor,
it.
thanks so much for being with us today. Thank you also for the great things that you're doing for the city of Atlanta. You look good in red and black. I've got a sculpture to give you as a token of our appreciation, and you need a UJ degree as well.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you for being here. Okay.
Now, don't y'all tell any of your yellow jacket. You can tell me.
Great. That was part of my job, is to make sure we're on time. The mayor has another meeting he's going to. We do appreciate him being with us today. It's now my pleasure to introduce Chandra Farley and John R. Seidel. Chandra serves as the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Atlanta. In this role, she leads Atlanta's sustainability and resilience efforts, overseeing interdepartmental and community engagement to address climate change and equitable impacts. She's tasked with developing a comprehensive climate resilience strategy covering energy security, housing, food systems, waste management, decarbonization, workforce training, and fleet electrification. Chandra's aim is to achieve 100% clean energy for all Atlantans by 2035, leveraging federal investments and the Justice 40 initiative to advance environmental justice. Prior to this, Chandra founded Resolve Consulting, focusing on energy justice, as well as the Good Energy Project, which empowers Black women's leadership in clean energy. John R. Seidel will facilitate a brief fireside chat with Chandra. He's the Director of Sustainability for the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Resilience. John R. Collaborates with Atlanta departments and external partners to achieve sustainability goals. Working under Mayor Dickens, he focuses on waste diversion, urban agriculture, energy efficiency, and resilience projects. He helped develop Atlanta's resilience strategy addressing the city's vulnerabilities. With a background in political science, he advocates for environmental justice and conservation. His experience in renewable energy, including work with the United Nations Foundation, as well as the Southern Company. He's also involved with environmental organizations like the Turner Foundation and the Captain Planet Foundation, promoting youth education and conservation. As many of you know, sustainability is one of our 4 pillars at the Terry College. We are committed to infusing sustainability across all of our programs, and for that reason, I am especially interested into this discussion. And please join me in welcoming Chandra and John R.
All right, so let's start this morning off right. Hey everybody, John R. Seidel, Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer, just in case you didn't hear the bio. So we got up early for this, right? So I want to make sure the room is awake. And being an honorary Bulldog with so many of my family members going to UGA, let's start off how we kick off. Yeah? Am I the first person to ask for that at these breakfasts? All right, let's do it. So ball's right there. I'm about to kick it off. Go Dogs! Sick 'em! Ooh, 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 ooh. Thank you for that. So now that we've kicked things off, I really appreciate being here today. Thank you so much for having us and giving us the platform, the mayor, the platform for us to talk about the vision for the city. And really, I want to pass it over to my boss, Chief Sustainability Officer Chandra Farley, to give a vision, because we're often asked, what does sustainability mean? What does resilience mean? And to give that vision and to give the introduction to our office and the goals for what we are trying to do, I think it would be best for this fireside chat to start with you.
Thank you so much, John R. Thank you, Dean, and thank you, everyone, for inviting us here today. I went to University of Kentucky, so but glad to be here in fellowship with my fellow SEC leaders. So I like to start with the mayor's vision. He talked about that a little bit. One safe city with one bright future, and then it goes on to start with safe, healthy, and connected neighborhoods for all, essentially. Talks about inclusive economic prosperity, elevating youth voices. And when I think about that vision, I think about, and when I talk to him about it, I'm like, that's a vision for environmental justice. you would be hard pressed to find an environmental justice organization, a community-based organization, a social service organization whose mission isn't in some way, shape, form, or fashion focused on ensuring our city, our state, our region has access to safe, healthy, and connected neighborhoods. And so as we really try to be intentional about racial equity and environmental justice as the foundation of our work for sustainability and climate resilience in our office, that guiding vision is really important. The mayor talked about a couple of his pillars: one safe city, a city of opportunity for all. Our sustainability and climate resilience work actually falls under the A City Built for a Future pillar. Although we say sustainability and resilience, just like one of the pillars here, is a thread across all of the mayor's priority pillars. So we start with 100% clean energy for 100% of Atlantans by 2035. That's our overarching goal. City Council, when the mayor was actually a part of City Council, adopted our Clean Energy Atlanta plan, committing the city to that transition. That's a very big job. And so we have a lot of work to do. I know we'll talk about some of the specifics that we use to focus on that. That's really our overarching goal, and a lot goes into that. When we talk about clean energy, we are talking about safe, healthy, connected neighborhoods. We are talking about quality, affordable housing, and strong small business.
Well, I think that gives a great introduction to some of our work. Also, we have some really exciting programs, policies. Before we start diving into those, we're the mayor's office. Tell what's our role in the mayor's office in progressing these goals meaningfully?
Yeah, so you spoke to it a little bit, and also in your bio talking about the interdepartmental collaboration. So we're a mayor's office and an executive office of the mayor. And that was a great question about local government function, because we spend a lot of time educating people on how at least City of Atlanta's government is worked up. So we're an executive office of the mayor. We can set policies, plans, and targets, but I don't have any buildings. I don't have any roads. So we depend on our operating departments to implement our strategies. So for instance, we have the largest municipal solar program in the state. We have solar on 26 now.
28 now.
28.
As of this month, as of Earth Month.
All right, awesome. So we're growing that number. But that requires partnerships with our operating departments. And when I talk about an operating department, of which we have like 24-ish, I think, our solar is on Department of Parks and Recreation centers. It's on Department of Watershed Management facilities. It is at the airport. Everybody remembers the airport is actually a City of Atlanta department. It is the Department of Aviation. And Fire and Rescue, Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department. We have solar on those facilities as well. So as we set those policies, plans, and targets, it's critical for us to be in relationship on our fleet electrification work, which you lead, John R., and our Department of Public Works, because our Office of Fleet Services is within the Department of Public Works, but we have an interdepartmental working group that we launched for that last year. So that's a good way to talk about how dependent we are on that interdepartmental relationship and those public-private partnerships also that the mayor discussed.
Absolutely. And as the mayor says, to do any of this work, and not just for the mayor's office and our operating departments, it takes a community. It takes a community of businesses, nonprofits, community leaders to be able to progress this work. It's a group project, as Mayor Dickens says, across all of his goals. So could you talk a little bit about the group project form of what we have in forms of our Clean Energy Advisory Board that helps support our 100% clean energy goals and help set us up with those policy programmatic recommendations to progress something like 100% clean energy by 2035?
Yeah, absolutely. So that group project is important. John R. mentioned community. So it is our City of Atlanta community, big C, City of Atlanta, the local government, and little c, City of Atlanta, all of you, all of us. So our Clean Energy Advisory Board was something critically important. It was actually a policy recommendation from the Clean Energy Atlanta plan. And when I was on the advocacy, I come from advocacy, and working on that side of things, I worked with our former Chief Sustainability Officer, our friend Shelby Busso, and John R. and others, because we knew that and equity was a foundation of that clean energy plan, and we can watch the progression of a focus on equity across all of the plans that we've had since 2011. We've got a long history of those plans. And so what we knew in late 2019, early 2020, which we all know what happened then, is that we had to make sure that if we were going to have a truly equitable deployment and implementation of this clean energy plan, that we had to have community voice at the table. So the Clean Energy Advisory Board was a policy recommendation. And what's important about that, it's a 26-member board. And what's important about that board is that we set aside seats on that board specifically reserved for residents from our most energy burdened neighborhoods. So if energy burden is the portion of household income spent on utilities monthly. The lower your income, the higher your utility bills, the higher your energy burden. Depending on what data set you're looking at, City of Atlanta is in the top 3 to 5 in the nation for energy burden. The state is moving up. I think we're now at 8 for energy burden in the nation. So it's critically important as clean energy and the clean energy transition is a mechanism to address energy affordability, that we had those voices at the table. And as a part of that Clean Energy Advisory Board, we launched a resource network. And so this is businesses and other folks that want to support the board. And our working groups are open to everyone. So we have 4 working groups. One's about clean funding and financing. One's community engagement. One's decarbonization. We have a decarbonization roadmap for the city. How do we get fossil fuels out of our buildings? And then we have sustainable transportation. So sustainable transportation is important to our interdepartmental fleet electrification working group, which I think is another great example of how we're integrating our departments with community, because you bring on different people to speak to that group.
Absolutely, and that's how this electric vehicle working group is a great example of working with departments, not just on electric vehicle purchases, electric vehicle charging, infrastructure for the city of Atlanta, but how can we innovate? How can we talk to different companies that are based here in Atlanta that are coming up with these new types of models where, you know, the city doesn't have millions and millions of dollars up front to be able to spend, whether that's installing solar on top of their roof. So we do it in an innovative way by working through a third-party company that pays to pretty much put their own solar panels on our rooftops, and then we pay them over a course of 20 years and have savings over those 20 years. So we avoid paying up front. We don't have to worry about operating and maintaining those panels now electric vehicles, electric charging infrastructure, using similar type models where we have the space. We have a lot of parking spaces around Atlanta. And really, EV charging is really the tale of 2 sides of the city. The southwest, and west sides of Atlanta don't have access to electric vehicle charging and can't benefit from all the benefits of electric vehicles, whether that's the environmental and the lower emissions locally. Obviously, the cost benefits, especially with electric vehicles that are used, that are on the market now for less than $10,000. We're in a time of great opportunity, but we have to make sure that the infrastructure is there. It's not a chicken and egg scenario. The infrastructure has to be there in order to be able to charge those vehicles. So doing a similar owned and operated model where the city looks at all the parking that's available at all of our department parks and recreation facilities, fire stations, to be able to host electric vehicle chargers, but not have to pay up front. Looking and working with these companies through public-private partnerships to be able to host those chargers. We don't have to pay up front. They do the installation. They operate and maintain those stations. And that's also what's led to our goal this year, the disparity between Southwest and West Atlanta having 12 locations for level 2 chargers, 1 DC fast charger, taking out the airport, of course, and our 301 electric vehicle charging ports at the airport. But this is the way. So it's led to a goal of having 250 new EV charging ports in the city of Atlanta, especially in those Justice 40 and those locations in that region of the city, by the end of this year. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to have to think innovatively. We're going to have to build these partnerships, and it's a group project. Getting back to that. So we talked about internal. We talked a lot about how we work with operational departments. We talked a little bit about how we work with community on policy and programs. I think it's also pertinent talking about UGA, which of course has this great staple in our community right here in the business school. But we also work really closely with other local governments, which, it takes a group project to move forward as a united state in Georgia to work with different local governments, including Athens Clarke County, who has a great and thriving leadership office for sustainability that we've been working very closely with for years. And so whether it's things like our Solar for All grant, what are some things that we're doing with not just Athens Clarke County, but all the local governments across Georgia to be able to take massive action in this critical moment where there's also a lot of federal funding opportunities. If you all didn't hear, there's a lot for infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act for sustainability, clean energy, EVs.
Yeah, absolutely. So Athens Clarke County is one of our key partners, and that definitely ties back to the mayor's conversation again around whose function is what aspect of government, whose function. So when we talk about clean energy, we can get our electricity from one place in the city of Atlanta and most of the state, and that's Georgia Power. And Georgia Power is regulated by the Georgia Public Service Commission. Raise your hand if you know who your public service commissioner is.
I know you do too.
So that is your homework, is to go home and find out who your Georgia Public Service Commissioner is. The Georgia Public Service Commission is a quote-unquote elected body of 5 officials. They make all the decisions for what you see on your utility bill. So if you're a Georgia Power customer, when you get your bill and you see all those line items and that total, those 5 people make that decision, right? So when we talk about clean energy and achieving our clean energy goals in City of Atlanta, our partner in Savannah, our partners at City of Decatur, DeKalb County, Athens Clarke County, we're all Georgia Power customers, and so it's very important for us to be active at the Public Service Commission. So we actually intervene, which just means we go to the Public Service Commission, intervene in cases where they're making decisions on how much our rates are going to be, different programs that we can have. So that's one of those ways that, because as a local government, when we talk about 100% clean energy, our mix is Georgia Power's mix. Like, we don't, have any power plants except for our solar installations, right? So our solar installations on our municipal facilities are actually little power plants. And so we want to continue to procure as much renewable energy as possible, and we want to reduce our use as much as possible. That requires a lot of capital. And so a lot of innovative approaches and policy. The reason that we have the largest municipal solar program in the state, the reason that Savannah is catching up to us, but they're doing great, is through policy called a Solar Energy Procurement Agreement, which, as John R. was talking about, allows us to install that solar with no upfront cost. So very important for us to be active there as a coalition of local governments working on innovation in the regulatory space, proposing new programs to commissioners and the utility, and taking advantage, as John R. mentioned, of the opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is the Biden-Harris administration. This is a historic investment in climate. It's the largest investment in climate and environmental justice in our nation's history, and there are a lot of dollars available to that. But again, a lot of that money is flowing to the state, so we again work together to make sure we're working with the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, where a lot of those dollars are going for energy in the state. And then we work together on really exciting things like the Energy Futures Grant. Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, was here a couple of weeks ago with us at Georgia Tech, making that announcement, and that was Atlanta, Savannah, and Decatur, working on new ideas. So that group project, how are we leveraging our power as a collective to advance, is critically important.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for giving that overview. I feel like, especially to this crowd, where I don't know if you want to get into the energy wonkiness of it all. So I think what would be good is to talk about the top 2 most exciting projects that our office is working on right now. I have some ideas, but I'll throw them over. I'll throw that as the fireside chat goes over to you.
So you'll have one and I have one. I bet I know what yours is. So one of mine is launching our Justice 40 Oversight Commission. So we talked about the Inflation Reduction Act. As a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden-Harris administration signed an executive order on racial equity that created the Justice 40 initiative. And that initiative is focused on directing 40% of the benefits, I'm air quoting benefits for a reason, that 40% of those benefits should flow directly to communities who have been experiencing disproportionate impacts of pollution or environmentally unjust communities. And so what some of our community members, some that are a part of our Clean Energy Advisory Board, did about a year or so ago, got together with one of our city council members who's also very active, Councilmember Jason Dozier, who's also been very active in a lot of green infrastructure, education, water conservation in the city, and created this Justice 40 Oversight Commission. It's half city departments and it's half community members. And so that group is focused on helping us figure out, so when we do go after big grants like Solar for All, there's a $20 billion opportunity, and our local governments coalition put in an application to have a portion of those dollars come to Georgia. We're going to depend on, and did depend on, our Justice 40 Oversight Commission and our Clean Energy Advisory Board, who worked on strategies all over the last year. We have multiple strategies that we're now able to pull from, and those come direct from community, and then we work together to figure out, okay, what is that local government application? So I think that's just such a another, we say public-private a lot, but community-public, if that's a thing, but being able to lift up that important aspect of not just community engagement, but co-development of policies at the local government level is going to be critical for achieving all our goals.
Thank you for that. I in terms of projects, and I think she knows what I want to say, but I touched on it a little bit earlier. The goal to have 250 new charging ports, especially in the regions that don't have electric vehicle charging access. We've really labeled that effort as Power Up Atlanta. So you already kind of got a spiel on that, so I'm not going to say that again. But I do want to say, especially because this is something that we've worked with other local governments on, and as part of a $250 million grant, had 20 other local governments from across the state, 80 plus organizations, churches, nonprofits, to go after this funding to support one major program. There's a lot of programs that are under it, but it's called Georgia Bright. And right now it's a statewide program. A lot of people think it's only in the city of Atlanta and city of Savannah because we've been making the most noise about it. But it's pretty much a pilot for 200 owner-occupied, low median income, solar and battery installations for a household that makes less or right around $100,000 per year. And this is super, super exciting. We can have day one savings. We actually just did a webinar because when we were presenting in cabinet, the mayor stopped us on that slide and said, wait a second. Most public servants and city employees are going to be making less than $100,000. Let's try and get every single this in front of every single City of Atlanta employee, and so this is definitely something that I'm really, really excited about. They have right around 40 signed leases right now, but I'm telling all the local governments that we're working with, help get the word out, because this is definitely something that can save people literally. What we were saying, like in terms of the average installation size, you're going to save $25 on your energy bill from day one, which over the lifetime of those panels can save around $10,000 to $15,000, which is incredibly meaningful over that 20-year lifetime. So I think Georgia Bright is super exciting because, well, one, we put in a major grant as a coalition with all these different local governments from the state to show this is an awesome program and we want to expand it, and it also helps address the energy equity issues that we've talked about today, especially as electricity and rates continue to rise, especially for those that are most energy burdened. So those are that's one that I wanted to focus on. You touched quickly on policies as well, because that's a big function of our office. What's one example of a policy that you're most excited about for this next year for our team?
Updating our sustainable building ordinance. So City of Atlanta has been a leader nationally and definitely in the region on sustainability from a policy level for years. We've got great demonstration, actually, from our sports community. If you think about Mercedes-Benz being LEED certified, State Farm Arena having True Zero Waste certification. I always like to give it, because those actual built demonstration projects where people are walking into every day are critically important. And it's the same for our buildings at the city. So we had a sustainable building ordinance, and my background's in buildings. I worked at South Base Energy Institute for about 8 years, went to architecture school, and that's kind of how I ended up in energy. And so I love buildings because I feel like buildings are the core of our fight for climate justice, because we spend 90% of our time in buildings, right? And when you talk about buildings, you got to talk about, well, what function does that building serve in community? And then you got to talk about, well, how do people feel in the buildings? And then you got to talk about, well, how do people get to the buildings, which is transportation, our second largest source of emissions. So all of those things, when we talk about buildings, get wrapped into that. And our sustainable building ordinance establishes a minimum of LEED Silver for new construction for our municipal buildings. And we have a huge stock of existing buildings as well. And so addressing those existing buildings sometimes can be the bar can be a little bit too high on the cost for some of the certifications. So what we're doing right now through some other federal funding, the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, is allocating some of our about $500,000 that we're going to get through this program to demonstrate some other opportunities. Is it well building? Is it fit well? Or just Energy Star, like when you walked into this building today, just tracking your Energy Star usage, which anybody, any of your commercial buildings can do online, to make sure that we're setting pathways forward for all of our buildings to reduce our energy consumption, determine if they are suitable for solar, but making them as energy efficient as possible, which saves the city money and also helps drive well-being and occupant health while we're in the buildings.
Yeah, and since we're speaking to a room full of people passionate about business, when you're talking about sustainability, you're talking about efficiency, running a business efficiently. And when you're talking about buildings, if you're building, whether you're talking about affordable housing, whether you're talking about commercial space that's for your tenants, for businesses, it comes down, housing is not affordable if it is not energy efficient, if it is not water efficient. And these are the things that where affordable housing goals are completely and totally aligned with making sure that we're building energy efficient, water efficient, and hopefully also adding clean energy and batteries as well in the future. I have to answer my own question before we open it up to the room because we're so excited to hear what questions you have for us. So for me, because I've talked a lot about electric vehicles today, Atlanta is certainly a leader in electric vehicle work, and we were one of the first to have an EV readiness ordinance, which mandates that all new commercial buildings have to have 20% of their spaces actually fitted for electric vehicle charging in the future, EV paneling, spacing for conduit, but now other cities have taken notice. They're like, yeah, that's like the base level. They're actually installing a certain percentage, whether that's 3%, 5% of all new spots for commercial buildings to actually have EV chargers installed as part of that new building. And for me, that's incredibly important, especially when you're talking about multifamily and affordable multifamily, because that's where you can have a lot of those EV charger needs met. You look around the city, there's a lot of commercial multifamily building happening right now. And so that's something that I'm super, super excited about for equitable electric vehicle charging access. It's also when I was living in apartments, it was the first question I would ask when I called a multifamily complex, do you have an EV charger? Because I've owned an EV for a long time. And they said no. I was like, thank you for saving me a lot of time. Yeah, with that, I think it'd be great to be able to open it up for questions. Thank y'all.
Hey, good morning. Thank you both for being here today. You guys have spent a lot of time today talking about all the different initiatives and progress that the city is making, and it's amazing. And I'd like to hear a little bit more also about resilience for a minute, just because that's such a huge deal for the business community. And recently we've seen situations like the Baltimore bridge disaster, or several years ago here in Atlanta we had the I-85 bridge collapse. So for a city also that has such a big logistics hub, whether it be the airport or all the different shipping that goes through here, whether it be something related to the airport or our energy grid, what keeps the city up at night from a resilience standpoint? What's on your radar?
Yeah, a great question. So as John R. mentioned, in 2017, the city developed Resilient Atlanta, which was a global effort of 100 cities to focus on resilience particularly. And so a number of the strategies that were developed from Resilient Atlanta, we are still implementing. Our Clean Energy Atlanta plan was a strategy in the Resilient Atlanta, plan. The second thing I will say, that interdepartmental collaboration that we have, this is a big topic for our Department of Enterprise Asset Management, which handles all of our buildings assets. And so one of the key resilience strategies that we have been focused on are our warming and cooling centers. So the city provides warming centers in the winter, cooling centers in the summer, for our unhoused populations, and sometimes just for those who are afraid to turn on their AC or turn on their heat because they know how expensive it's going to be. And one of the things that we have learned about that is some of our centers are relying on gas generators, and that can be a health and safety issue. So what we have been focused on with our recreation centers that have solar on them is now developing a battery storage program. So we're going to be looking at facilities that already have solar and those that are coming through our program to how do we add battery storage, which will be a key resilience strategy to make sure not just those recreation centers that need to serve emergency needs, but our 911 center as well as looking at some very innovative ways to focus on storage and those resilience opportunities. You mentioned the airport, and Department of Aviation has its own group of sustainability staff that we work very closely with. And this year we are updating our clean energy plan because it was written to be updated every 3 years, but it will be a more comprehensive climate resilience action plan. So this is where we're really going to dive into what are the specific climate vulnerabilities at the city of Atlanta. It's drought, flooding and heat, extreme heat. I mean, we know that generally. And then what are the key strategies, like cool roof strategies? How are we addressing urban heat island effect? Well, we'll start to dive into those. And we've got a climate resilience action plan survey out right now that you can take. We should share that maybe with Christine to get out to the list so we can get input on what those priority strategies are. And this is also a component of the mayor's Moving Atlanta Forward infrastructure bond program. So we have an interdepartmental infrastructure working group as a part of that. And our office, along with Department of Watershed Management, where our green infrastructure work sits. It's in Department of Watershed Management. So all of us are able to be there working together to address a lot of those resilience issues and continue furthering develop our resilience strategy as a city.
Time for, I think, one more question. There you go.
Oh, guys, I'm sorry. I was actually.
Sorry. I'll get your question after. Like when we're all leaving, make sure. Yeah, don't leave yet. Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you guys for the work you're doing to keep Atlanta green. That's tremendously meaningful. I'm a little bit curious about the program you mentioned with the group that installs solar at no cost on city buildings. I think you mentioned there are 28 so far that have done that, and they just kind of take over and act as the utility. Could you speak a little bit more about that program and kind of your plans to electrify us through the future?
Absolutely. So it's with a company that's based here in Atlanta called Cherry Street Energy. They're based here. Pretty much the way it works, the Solar Energy Procurement Agreement, SEPA, for people who like acronyms. Pretty much we pay them. They're kind of like a power company where we pay them only for the power that's produced at a specific and agreed upon rate that doesn't change for the term that we've agreed to in our contract. So it allows us to have price predictability, but then also make sure at the same time as we continue to have rate increases in the future that we actually have savings in comparison across our portfolio versus Georgia Power's, what we take off of the Georgia Power grid. And so, yeah, it's something that's really exciting, and a lot of other cities like Savannah, City of Savannah, have also worked with Cherry Street Energy to be able to install. And looking in the future, as Chandra said, with batteries doesn't necessarily mean it's with Cherry Street Energy in the future, but we're always trying to get the best deal, right? Using taxpayer dollars to the best to get the most impact. So, but I think that's it. Thank you so much for having us.
Shonda, John R., thank you all for being with us today and for the good work that you're doing for the city of Atlanta. You too get red and black.
Thank you. You want to be in the middle? We got to.